Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, Bryan Wachter joins us. He's the Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs at the Retail Association of Nevada, here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
What do you count on? You count on your power every day. At NV Energy, we've always powered what's important to you, but we're not looking at the past. We're focused on the future. While our standards are high, our rates will remain low. And our commitment to renewables isn't just meeting standards, but leading the way. Because you can count on more than just your power. You can count on the company who brings it to you. That's our promise. You can count on it.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
Ring in the holidays with $350,000 big holiday extravaganza at Carson Valley Inn. Over 1,000 winners. Weekly cash, free play, and up to $10K in cash every Saturday. And 2 grand prize drawings. Win up to $20,000 in cash. 'Tis the season for winning big at the Carson Valley Inn.
Pro Group Management specializes in providing industries with the necessary components to satisfy and exceed workers' comp requirements. Every business has unique needs and specific regulations. Pro Group Management stays ahead of the curve, providing up-to-date services to keep your industry in top form. Discover how we simplify your tasks, improve efficiency, and reduce expense to keep you moving in a positive direction. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Nevada Newsmakers Studio is located at the headquarters of the Nevada Trucking Association. Motion and purpose are a truck's greatest virtue.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're always pleased to welcome back to the program Bryan Wachter. He is Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs for the Retail Association of Nevada. Pleasure to have you back on the program, sir.
Thank you, Sam. Great to be here.
So how was Thanksgiving shopping?
Thanksgiving shopping went really well. As you know, more retailers are offering sales earlier. So the Black Friday weekend has really kind of come into halftime instead of kickoff. But in Nevada, we saw 1.8 million shoppers out for the weekend and spent a total of $606 million.
Oh, that's fantastic. And that's more than half the population of the state of Nevada.
No, it absolutely is. It's sadly about 800,000 more than voted in our last election, Sam.
Well, if it's a toss-up between being involved in politics and shopping for Christmas, I think we can see who the winner is here. But let me ask you this, joking aside. How is the Christmas shopping season looking?
We are certainly seeing folks take economic decisions and making choices based on where the economy is, where they think the economy is going. There's no doubt that inflation is playing a role in changing the items that customers are putting in the cart. But what we've consistently seen is consumer spending either up or holding its own month over month. And so we continue to see higher consumer demand. At the same time, we are seeing consumers starting to make different economic choices.
Okay, so are you seeing, or do you know at this point, more money being spent on credit cards than in the past? Or is it still, a combination of cash and credit?
No, we are certainly seeing a trend line that has been growing for several months in access to debt, credit, and loans in order for folks to be able to continue meeting those expenses as they were before we hit COVID and this inflationary spike. And so, we have seen more and more people putting necessary goods on lines of credit. And that is something that is going to have long-term implications going forward.
To say the least, when you look at the credit card rates, the decades ago of 12% interest rates on credit cards that made them usable is long gone. From an inflation point of view, so you were saying there that people are buying less goods but paying more for them. Is that so? The money is going up, but they're getting less for it. Is that how it's working?
Not apples to apples, Sam. We are seeing an increase in spending above what inflation would expect. And so, we would understand that with inflation, there would be an increase of spending for the same amount of goods. But we are still continuing to see an increase in spending beyond what inflation can account for. And so the consumer demand is still high, and it is still driving more and more consumption. And so that's above, just being able to explain away that inflation's at nearing 10%. And so you're going to see that 10% bump. We are seeing more movement beyond inflation.
Okay, so what's the hottest item at this point for Christmas?
We are still looking at, what toys are looking at. I think consumer electronics are something that are going to be huge. Of course, video games, clothing and apparel is always at the top of the list. And then we expect gift cards to round off their usual 20%. So, things are going to be very varied this year. And we are probably going to see as a trend, things that aren't maybe necessities, but aren't also luxuries are where gifts are headed this year. Things that you can need, things that you can use, and things that are going to have their value, last.
So yesterday was National Sock Day, so I could probably expect to see an increase in socks this holiday season.
My grandma always gave me socks, and that was one of my favorite presents, Sam.
Oh, absolutely. When you see some of the socks that are out there, I couldn't agree with you more. Electronics, are we seeing any shortage because of the chip shortage?
I think you're seeing shortages in niche devices. Some of the higher end gaming devices, things like that are still waiting on some parts. But for the most part, we seem to have been able to manage the increase in demand that working from home and schooling from home brought onto that supply chain. And so I don't have any particular alarm bells ringing in actually any of our supply chain departments at the moment.
The media was making a lot of noise about the potential for the rail strike, saying that this would affect the Christmas shopping season, but aren't all the merchants already loaded up with all their Christmas supplies?
I think the overall concern wasn't so much what it would do for the Christmas supply chain, because to your point, Sam, a lot of that inventory is already moved and is moved heavily by trucking, as you know. What gets moved primarily by rail are raw materials, gas, infrastructure, and things that would grind several industries to a pausing point. I mean, we saw during COVID what happens when you take and start removing raw materials from the supply chain. You end up breaking the supply chain, and then other tributaries start growing to try to manage that problem, and it causes continual disruption. And so, I believe Santa Claus would have been able to get his job done. The question is whether or not he would have enough fuel for the sleigh to take off.
Okay. Well, we won't tell the kids this. We'll just keep them optimistic. But are you optimistic for the coming year with inflation and the potential for these numbers to keep going up, at least over the next 6 months to a year? What are your concerns about retail at that point?
I think retail is going to continue to obviously mirror what happens with the general economy and where that feels. Am I optimistic? I can't say that I'm very optimistic, Sam. I think when the Fed tells us what they're going to do, we need to listen to them. And while they may be contemplating a 50 basis point increase next week instead of a 75, what they have said is that the rate ultimately may end up being higher than anyone's expecting, and that they're going to have to hold these rates for a prolonged period of time. And so this isn't the case where we are starting to see the Fed back down on these interest rates. This is something that is going to stick with us probably most of 2023. And so what that means for our small retailers is their access to credit lines, which are primarily credit cards and lines of credit through banks. Those interest rates are going to continue to climb. And some of these small businesses aren't going to be able to have the credit lines to be able to manage their operations going forward. And that's what we're truly worried about coming.
And that's an echo of 2008.
It does have certain echoes to that, yes.
Yeah, because I mean, I remember businesses that had credit lines with banks that suddenly found them halved or gone away completely and left businesses unable to meet their commitments either to payroll or to buying the goods that they needed to fulfill their stocks. You know, one of the areas that Retail Association deals in, and I know it's not your main area of expertise, that's Liz's, but pharmacy, it's a very interesting time because you know, you've got your regular drugstores, regular insurance that most people are familiar with, but now you have not only companies like GoodRx coming in and saying, we're not insurance, but if you get our card, you can get these huge discounts on your medication. Amazon has really ramped up their services with their pharmacy. Mark Cuban is also on a tear. Do you see a dramatic drop in pricing for drugs because of these three entities, especially Amazon?
Well, I think competition is always going to create an atmosphere where, in retail at least, you are trying to provide the products and services that someone wants at the price that they're willing to pay for them, and you want to, you know, certainly gain competition amongst your competitors. And so I think having those kinds of pressures on pharmacy and the price of drugs is a good thing. I think there are several things in state law, federal law that are really hurdles to getting the lowest cost prescription drugs from the manufacturers to the customers. And so I would look at things being a little bit more positive. You know, I think the legislature is going to take a look at pharmacy benefit managers. It wouldn't be the first time that they've looked at those conversations and really kind of nailed down what is driving the cost of those prescription drugs, and then how retail pharmacies can facilitate that. We are, you know, one part of a very long supply chain, and so you know, it may be time to address some of the things higher up on the supply chain first.
You know, I got to say, some of the numbers are stunning. I take Nexium, and I went to get a prescription filled about a year ago, and I'd forgotten to tell him I had a GoodRx card. And I saw the actual price that the pharmacy was going to charge without insurance or a card, and it was $1,200 for this prescription. With the GoodRx, it was $35. It's a stunning gap between, you know, what you can pay if you have nothing and what you can pay if you have insurance or GoodRx or Amazon or these others.
I think it proves, Sam, that there's probably a better, more efficient way of looking at the system. And if more actors in the space lead to that outcome, I think that's a good thing.
And do you think that's potentially going to happen at the next session here in Nevada?
You know what, Sam, I think this is a conversation that has continued to happen in the legislature. We have seen legislation from both parties, you know, trying to address these problems. And I think it's completely realistic to expect this conversation to take place in some fashion coming up.
All right, let's take a break. More with Bryan Wachter when we come back.
Oh, what fun it is to win during the $100,000 Christmas giveaways at Tamarack Casino. Up to $17,000 in cash and free play giveaways each week, and over $20,000 in giveaways on New Year's Eve, including up to $10K in cash. Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Event Center sits at the heart of the Las Vegas Strip. 2 floors of meeting and event space are ideal for groups and conventions. Stay in one of 200 luxurious rooms and suites. Brand your event throughout the property. Flexible event spaces make for easy planning and personalization. Take over the entire hotel with a full buyout option.
Safety is the #1 priority for the trucking industry. Over $7 billion a year is spent on technology like this electronic eye that will apply the brakes automatically. But the most important factor for safety is the truck driver. These hardworking men and women who safely move over 70% of our nation's freight and 94% of Nevada's. We thank you because trucks move America forward.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Ring in the holidays with $350,000 big holiday extravaganza at Carson Valley Inn. Over 1,000 winners. Weekly cash, free playing up to $10K in cash every Saturday. And 2 grand prize drawings. Win up to $20,000 in cash. 'Tis the season for winning big at the Carson Valley Inn.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Bryan Wachter. He is the Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs for the Retail Association of Nevada. So your thoughts post-election, sir?
I'm glad it's over, Sam.
The TV stations aren't. Nevada Newsmakers isn't.
I think Nevada TV stations got some welcome news with the change in the Democratic primary calendar. At the pain of some Iowa TV stations, I would imagine. So I'm not going to feel bad there.
No, and I would agree with you there. It's going to be huge for Nevada in terms of revenue for these TV stations. But you know, the irony is that the way that sales departments have gone in advertising, period, across broadcasters, radio, TV, newspapers, if it weren't for the political, I think a lot of these TV stations would be bankrupt by now.
Well, that's your industry, not mine, but I'm glad I don't have cable.
Okay. It's an interesting way to look at it. But what were your thoughts on the results here in Nevada and looking at the makeup of the upcoming legislature?
You know, Sam, I think overall, I expected turnout to be a little bit higher. I mean, we've had a Nevada legislature that has gone out of their way to make voting extremely accessible, to the point where, you know, you're hand delivered a ballot to your home. Postage is paid, just need to put it back in the mail, and still we had a very low turnout rate. And so that's something that really shocked me the most, was just the low turnout overall. But, you know, I think we've seen that Nevada statewide can continue to support Republican statewide candidates under certain circumstances. But legislatively, this appears to be a democratically dominated state.
Do you go along with the line that's being pushed now here in Nevada, that because of election deniers and people who had concerns about voting irregularities, that actually suppressed the Republican vote and Republicans stayed home? Do you buy that?
Well, to an extent, Sam. We certainly saw at the Retail Association and the polling that we did throughout the cycle that there was a contingency at sometimes high as 6%, where it kind of came down to at the end was around 2% of folks who said, I'm not voting, I'm not going to participate. And it was largely because of their feelings about election integrity. And so you're not talking about a huge percentage. You're talking about 2%, but in a time and in an election where the margin of error is going to be 15,000 votes, 2% is enough to change the course of an election.
Well, absolutely. And, you know, the irony that most people aren't aware of is that all this money that's spent on political advertising is really aimed at this tiny percentage of voters that don't make up their mind until pretty much the day they're going into the polling booth. And so that's in the 2-3% range normally. Some people said it might have been as high as 5% in this election cycle. But if between 2 and 6% were also staying away because of election denial, that really throws a monkey wrench into the whole process. And who does it benefit?
No, I couldn't agree more. And so, you know, to sit there and suggest that it is a vast majority, I mean, it's higher than I think anyone's comfortable with. You know, but it's certainly, and I think the gentleman who ran against Justin Jones for the Clark County Commission said it best, is it certainly cost a few Republicans their elections. And that is something that, you know, I'm not sure wasn't manufactured.
I'm sorry, say the last thing again.
I said, I'm not sure that wasn't manufactured both by both sides of the political aisle, Sam, in this election.
Well, and that was something that was very interesting because it was so obvious that both sides were doing their best to get nominees that were unelectable. And How did it work out in the end? I mean, I don't think it worked out well for anybody.
No, I question, especially looking at the 2022 election results, how effective any one political operation was. I think credit goes to Governor Lombardo's staff. And you talk about a 2% problem on the far right, and you talk about these minute, 1%, 2% of all these little universes, and that is a very fine line and a very strategic plan that you have to be able to do to get over that finish line. But especially when you look down ballot, I'm not sure that there was an operation that was actually able to move the needle in such a way that overcame any sort of registration advantages.
Do you think that, surprisingly to me, that, because the public has such a short attention span these days, that memories of COVID and the negative impacts of COVID through the governance in Nevada really came through, and that's what propelled the Lombardo campaign to victory?
This was a pretty hard thing to forget, Sam. This wasn't a particular scandal. This wasn't. This was something that either it affected your job, it definitely affected your kids if you had them, and if you are a parent with kids who are in the school system, especially during COVID, you are still seeing the ramifications of those decisions and how they're being made, both in students, in staff. And so I think it's a hard thing to forget. But I think it's kind of the reverse problem, for Governor Sisolak is, if he, just lost 5 or 6% of Democrats because of COVID, or 5 or 6% of nonpartisans because of COVID, it may not have been a majority felt that, but it was enough to make sure that Lombardo was going to be successful. And so this was an election won or lost on the margins. So I think it's easy to say that there were several issues that all culminated into how Nevada voters voted.
Are we, as some like to say, a purple state at this point, or are we a Democratic state that sometimes leans purple? How do you see it through your research?
Well, I think, I'll probably take a little bit of a cop out here, Sam, for a couple of reasons before answering. Is one, we don't know if 2024 is going to be the last election that Nevada has under our current election rules. We're messing around with the presidential calendar. That's going to have effects. And then on the ballot in 2024, we're going to decide whether or not to go to open primary ranked choice voting. And so, whether or not we are purple or blue, I think we have seen Washoe County certainly move to the center. You see that in their legislative candidates. You see that in who they chose on a statewide level. And so I think that is moving the state on a statewide basis a little bit more center than it has normally been. But I think once you break out of those statewide races, it is purely a happenstance based on legislative registration. And so in that case, then yes, we are a blue state.
All right, let's take a break. More with Bryan Wachter when we come back.
Ring in the holidays with $350,000 big holiday extravaganza at Carson Valley Inn. Over 1,000 winners. Weekly cash, free playing up to $10K in cash every Saturday. And 2 grand prize drawings. Win up to $20,000 in cash. 'Tis the season for winning big at the Carson Valley Inn.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
Oh, what fun it is to win during the $100,000 Christmas giveaways at Tamarack Casino. Up to $17,000 in cash and free play giveaways each week, and over $20,000 in giveaways on New Year's Eve, including up to $10K in cash. Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers with Bryan Wachter. He's the Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs for the Retail Association of Nevada. We have a session coming, so many new members. What do you think is going to be the biggest issue that we deal with in this session?
How to spend $1 billion, Sam. This is going to be a fun legislative session.
And how would you like to see it spent in 30 seconds or less?
No, I think we need to take a look at making sure that business regulations are as small as they can be, especially for professional licensing. Really taking a look at how we can encourage Nevadans who find themselves in the gig economy or unhappy with their jobs, how we can encourage them to become entrepreneurs. I'd like to look at ways that we could encourage businesses through grants, maybe to provide inventive solutions to plastic recycling. We should be taking a look at prescription drug prices and how those can be lowered. And we should be looking at how to combat organized retail crime. It's a problem. Our employees aren't safe. Our customers are threatened. And it's a huge crime problem and definitely something the legislature can solve.
And that's where we have to leave it. Thank you, Bryan. I really appreciate you doing this as always. And Merry Christmas, my friend.
Thanks, Sam.
And we'll be right back.
Truck drivers are some of the hardest working people you'll meet, delivering over 70% of America's freight and 92% of Nevada's. When there's a natural disaster, they're delivering critical supplies to help those communities recover and rebuild. Every sector of the economy and our nation's military rely on truck drivers. So let's take a moment to say thank you. On the open road or city streets, our truck drivers are rolling to make our economy and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
A bird's eye captures its surroundings at different heights. At Bryan Culpa Photography, we can make your imagination soar over buildings, parks, cityscapes, and beyond. Bryan's images tell the story and get the job done. If you need a new perspective to tell your story, contact Bryan today. Bryan Culpa Photography. Experience the bird's eye view at bryanculpaphotography.com.
Imagine a magical garden that feeds Carson City's hungry and homeless, teaches our high school students agriculture, creates hanging floral displays to beautify downtown, and yet charges nothing. It's not magic. It's the Greenhouse Project. It's real, it's growing, and it needs your help. Go online to carsоncitygreenhouse.org so together we can grow it forward.
With Nevada's only transplant center and verified burn center, the science is here. With award-winning cardiologist and the state's only dedicated heart failure clinic, the talent is here. With Nevada's most advanced robotic surgery, the technology is here. And with the Silver State's only designated pediatric trauma center, hope is here. All because we are here. UMC.
As always, you can watch Nevada Newsmakers 24 hours a day at NevadaNewsmakers.com. See you on the next show.